Hi, everyone. My name is Menas Kizoulis. I am the Director of Scientific Engagement with Neutrogena. I'll be spending the next 30 minutes talking about science of sunscreen, while also providing you some really great information around advocacy and assets that you can have at your disposal for greater education. I love talking about this topic. I've been doing skin health research for over 20 years with Neutrogena, and sun protection and sunscreens are one of our favorite topics to talk about. So let's get grounded first in some of the stark statistics that exist when it comes to skin cancer. Today alone, over 9,500 people will be diagnosed with skin cancer in the United States. And skin cancer is one of the most common cancers that you see in the United States. You actually see more skin cancer than all cancers combined, and the cases of melanoma continue to rise. I am one of those statistics. I had been diagnosed with very early stage of melanoma skin cancer years ago, and it's something that is top of mind. I am a classic case of someone who did not necessarily practice sun-safe behaviors, wasn't really taught at a young age about protecting your skin. In fact, we did the opposite. We believed that we needed to experience a sunburn before you can really start getting that deep tan. One thing we know for sure from a lot of the research that's been done, some of it from Australia, that it really does show that daily sunscreen use can cut the incidence of melanoma in half, yet only 40% of households, less than 40% of households, purchase sunscreen at all in the United States. So there's still a lot of room for improvement. One of the reasons why it matters as much, if not more today than it has in previous decades, is because we are seeing the intensity of UV increasing. We've seen some of this preliminary data coming from Australia, where they're seeing an average increase in high UV index days. We're seeing some of these same trends as well in the United States, and that's what the graphic on the left here shows. There are many more days, high UV index days all across the country when you compare data from 2017 versus 1997. On the right, the graphic really does show just how much sun we're being exposed to on a regular basis. 75% of US cities are experiencing over 100 days throughout the calendar year of a very high UV index. And for those who might not quite understand the UV index is an indication of UV intensity. And to give you an idea, UV index of 8, which is where this analysis was done on, for someone with fairer skin like myself, I will start to develop a sunburn in as little as 15 to 20 minutes when the UV index is 8. And so the concept of protecting your skin has never been more important than it is today. Unfortunately, though, we know there's a lot of opportunities still to really drive a sun safety message, raise awareness, and really start changing behavior as much as we can. We'll talk about that as we go through this presentation. One of the things that I believe is really interesting is that while what the reasons that people aren't wearing sunscreens, over 50% believe they aren't exposed to enough sun to even warrant using sunscreen or some form of sun protection. 15% don't like how sunscreen feels. And then 22% believe their skin type doesn't burn easily. And I think the reality of the situation is that everyone can benefit from using sunscreen and practicing a variety of sun-safe behaviors. The slides I just presented just before this really help dispel this notion that you don't need to be using sun protection. And the reality as well is that there's really strong data showing that all ethnicities and skin tones can sunburn. And so there is a need to continue to protect your skin. And if you're not motivated to protect your skin just simply because of your fear of a skin cancer, being able to protect from UV radiation and sunlight will help other benefits in terms of preventing accelerated signs of aging and sunburns overall. The other thing I like to talk about too is that your sun care needs do change throughout the year. They differ by the type of activity you're participating in. It can vary by the time of day, the skin tone that you have, and whether or not you have a sensitivity to sun, or maybe even more likely to burn than others. And this really is an important insight into why, when we're formulating, developing sunscreens, we are looking to develop a wide range of products that can suit the variety of needs that you as an individual or your family have when they're outdoors and out in the sun. A sunscreen that you want to use when you're on the beach in the middle of the summer, when the UV index is quite high, will be very different than a sunscreen you might be applying only on the face, and your sun activity for the day is literally just walking out to the car to and from work. So better understanding these aspects can really help you better identify the right products, for your skin needs. But it also really reaffirms the fact that we all should be not only practicing sun safe behaviors, but choosing and purchasing the right sunscreens that we need. I know for me personally, I have a variety of sunscreens I will use. I have sunscreens, at an SPF 30 or 50 level for kind of day-to-day use. I'll use something a little higher, especially because of my history of skin cancer, when I'm out in more, high intensity environments. And we'll use all different forms in our family, from sticks to sprays to lotions. All have a purpose, whether it's ease of use or reliability of protection. So these are all factors I think we all should be taking into account when we are choosing our sunscreens. It's also obviously a key factor when developing sunscreen. So as product developers, we have to consider a variety of aspects, not only all the different environments and activities that people are participating in when they are out in the sun, but then how do you blend the aspects of aesthetics and performance? Sunscreens have to protect from UV, and they have to drive compliance. They need to be aesthetically pleasing. That we know is one of the biggest hurdles that we have to overcome. So often we get asked the question, what is the best sunscreen? And I think the easy answer is it's the sunscreen that you personally will use regularly and as recommended. We know that sunscreen can protect the skin from UV rays, but you have to be able to use it regularly at the level, the amount that is recommended to be able to have that to relate to the SPF level that's on the label. And you need to be able to reapply as needed, especially if you're sweating, if you're out in the water. And so fundamentally, it's finding the right sunscreen that blends into your skin tone, that is easy to apply, that you like wearing. That's the one that's probably best for you. And we all have our own preferences. Some of the factors we look at when developing the sunscreen formulation are what you have here on the screen. We look at stability of the formulation. We look at solubility of the actual ingredients, the sunscreen filters that we use to really maximize efficiency and efficacy of the sun filters. Aesthetics, as I mentioned before, is a huge focus. We need to make sure that we're developing products that blend in quite nicely in a variety of skin tones, have a really nice glide, are easy to apply. And then when we're thinking about sunscreens that are meant for, let's say, sport applications or on the beach, we have to now start thinking about how do you ensure the sunscreen stays on the skin, it's not being washed off quickly. And so there are a variety of film formers and other ingredients that we can use to really help ensure we have that water resistance. The reason we show all this is because one of the interesting aspects for me is that I don't think the general consumer appreciates the complexity of developing a sunscreen formulation. It probably is single-handedly one of the most complex and difficult skincare categories for a formulator to develop products in. In the United States, these products are regulated as an over-the-counter medication. And so, there are requirements established by the FDA, but fundamentally, we're trying to balance, I said before, being able to develop something that feels beautiful and wonderful, easy to apply, has a beautiful aesthetic, while also ensuring that the sunscreen filters and the various ingredients we incorporate into the formula are stable and able to protect the skin. In addition, we want to make sure that the sunscreen will remain stable on shelf. And so that's, really important because, again, the complexity of formulating sunscreens, once we initially produce these products, you want to make sure and have the confidence that these products will continue to be stable and perform when you buy them off the shelf in the store, your favorite store that you go to. So fundamentally, let's really just reground in what is the core role of a sunscreen. The sunscreen is supposed to protect against UVB and UVA rays. UVA rays are much more ubiquitous. They are rays that penetrate a little deeper into the, beyond the surface into the deeper layers of the skin. They are associated with the formation of free radicals that can damage the key components of the skin, which lead to signs of aging like wrinkles. It's also, UVA can lead to damage that causes skin cancer as well. UVB, though, while less ubiquitous than UVA, is much more of a high energy particle. So UVB rays can cause more damage. They hit more of the surface of the skin, but they directly damage our DNA, are direct factors and main causes in leading to cancer. And so understanding this and being able to then use the armament of skin filters that are sunscreen filters that are available to us is important, because you want to really develop a sunscreen that protects against both UVB and UVA rays. And that term that you often see on a sunscreen label, it's called broad spectrum. And so fundamentally, there are two main classes of sunscreen filters that we have at our disposal. One are the mineral filters. These are really two. It's titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. The way mineral filters work is by reflecting and absorbing UV rays. They basically like to scatter the UV off the surface of the skin, but they do absorb some of it as well. The chemical sunscreens work by absorbing that UV radiation. And it's quite often you might sense a sense of warmth or heat when wearing a sunscreen. Obviously, part of that is due to the fact that you're outdoors in the sun. But the way your chemical sunscreen works is by taking the by absorbing the UV rays, that radiation particle, and dissipating that high energy into heat. And that's why often you might feel a sense of warmth or heat when using sunscreens, but it's actually a sign that the sunscreen is actually working. And I always like telling that little anecdote, because it's always a fun concept of like, that's why you actually feel that way. The other thing I'm a big fan of, and I know we try to do quite a bit at Neutrogena, is really provide a combination of offerings, whole host of forms, as you see in the picture here, from liquids to lotions to sprays to sticks, to really drive that sunscreen usage. All of these would require a slightly different approach to really developing these products. And again, the active ingredients we use have to work in these different forms. The other thing that I think people might take for granted too is, well, a sunscreen is a sunscreen. We have to blend and use the right mix of sunscreen filters to be able to ensure we get a robust, broad spectrum protection against your UVA and UVB rays. And not all sunscreen filters protect against the same wavelength of light. And so that's why you often see on the back of your package a variety of sunscreen filters being used. And that's because each of those sunscreen filters will protect against one particular range of UV. And that blend of UV filters will give you that broad spectrum protection. And then we formulate with other ingredients to be able to then develop the variety of forms that you see on the screen here. One of the other aspects that we talked about before, which is around the stability of the sunscreen, not only does your sunscreen to be stable while sitting on the shelf, but we have to make sure that the sunscreen filters, the package that we use that protect us from UV, remain stable as well. These ingredients will start to break down when exposed to the sun. And so one of the things that we've innovated around is the development of our Helioplex technology, which is a superior technology that not only helps provide a superior aesthetic, but also ensures that we have a photostable sunscreen package. Avobenzone, which is a sunscreen filter that protects against the UVA range. It does a wonderful job doing that, but it's also very unstable. And so our Helioplex technology helps stabilize avobenzone so you can get that superior level of broad spectrum protection, which is really important. It's something that we introduced over 15 years ago, and it was class leading at the time and still is in the ability to really develop a robust sunscreen package. The other aspect that we know is really, really important is really having sunscreens that blend in beautifully, sunscreens that push the envelope in terms of aesthetic and really merge this world of kind of the recreational sunscreen and the skincare world. And the Invisible Daily Defense line that we just launched over the last year really does a wonderful job doing that. It's a product that blends in all skin tones and does not leave behind a white cast. It uses the Helioplex technology, which is found not only in the Invisible Daily Defense, but our hero platform, which we call Ultra Sheer. Here's an example of the products being developed and with some of our employees, having them try these products. You can see how well they blend in. I know this particular product has become my wife's personal favorite, and it really does a wonderful job blending in. But beyond the aesthetics, we want to make sure that the sunscreen is providing robust broad spectrum protection. And so what you see here in the graph, we can actually look at the UV absorbance of a variety of sunscreens. And so the higher the curve, the greater level of UV absorbance, the performance of the sunscreens. And so what you see here in the orange line is our Helioplex technology and how well it does in the UVB range, and then again in the UVA range. And it's on par, if not better than the variety of products that we tested from a variety of competitors that you might find in the marketplace. And again, why is this important? Because again, you have to balance the aesthetic with the performance of the UV, the performance of the sunscreen to protect against the UV range. And there are sunscreens that do this really well, especially those that use the Helioplex technology. I wanted to show also some research and data behind mineral sunscreens. We've come a long way in the industry in formulating mineral sunscreens. Some of the original sunscreens that you might see famously shown in movies with the really thick application on the surface of let's say a lifeguard's nose. Well, we've come a long way. Mineral sunscreens are evolving quite rapidly to be much nicer, much more of an acceptable aesthetic. And we're actually being able to not only develop a nice aesthetic, but also create really wonderful sunscreen forms, especially in sticks that glide on smooth. I remember years ago, some of the original mineral stick formulations tend to drag when applying on the surface of the skin. And we've been able to overcome that again with formulation innovation and being able to use the right mix of ingredients to really be able to provide a much more seamless, easy application. And as you can see, some of our studies show that our products can actually are 33% less effort to apply, which is really important. And again, we're limiting the whitening. And again, the mineral sunscreens tend to be the most whitening. So being able to minimize that on a variety of skin tones is really important. And again, being able to then look at the ability for your sunscreen to protect against the UVA, UVB range is really important. This is data really showing across UVA how you can have a variety of performance from sunscreens. And this is the mineral sheer zinc lotion that I'm showcasing here. The point being here is that sunscreens do have a variety of performances. You can't just look at the SPF label and say that every single SPF 50 product is the same. If there's anything you learn from kind of understanding the formulation here, that there are some differences, and you have to find the right product for you that really does protect you as best as possible. And this is an example of a mineral sunscreen formulated to really maximize that level of protection, especially across the UVA range. So one of the things I want to transition to is being able to talk about not only sunscreen development and really driving this balance of superior aesthetics and application for all skin tones with performance, but then also how we're driving education and advocacy, because it's really critically important. It doesn't matter if you all are listening to this and learning something, if it's not helping you better understand the science of sun protection and sunscreens and understand why it's important to protect your skin, then it's all for naught. So I think these are really great examples of what we're trying to do. One, I like to always show this type of slide information, is really trying to help demystify sunscreens and better educate you all here of what are the typical questions you get. And so if you look at Google Trends, if you look at just Google search histories, these are some of the most common questions. So I'll tackle a couple of these and move on. The answer to whether or not they expire, yes, they can expire. As I mentioned before, sunscreens are one of the more complicated products to develop. They can break down. So every sunscreen in the US should have a expiration date on the label. And then the other thing I'll tackle quickly is around vitamin D. I know it's a big topic. People are worried about vitamin D deficiency when using sunscreens. There is no data, no strong data to show clinically that the regular use of sunscreens leads to vitamin D deficiency. You do not need much UV exposure to develop the vitamin D that you need. And if there are concerns, you can do more testing to verify whether or not you have a deficiency. And then there are obviously nutritional and supplement ways through nutrition and supplements to be able to address any issue. So those are two of the questions. We in the future could always tackle some more of these in future discussions. The other thing I think that's really important is not only being able to identify the right sunscreen products and sun protection measures you should all be following, but then also looking at your skin. It's something I know I do periodically, as I said before, with our history, but it's something that everyone should get accustomed to doing. We developed over the past year a tip sheet, a website, a microsite basically, that helps people better understand how to do self-exams and what you should look for across a variety of skin tones. It's really important to get into that habit, better understand and look at how your skin looks. Is it changing? Are moles changing? Are there any unique spots that you can't quite understand, what's going on and they look odd and different? If anything is changing like that on the skin, it's always a good idea to go to see a dermatologist. The last thing I want to highlight, and I think this is one of the more exciting ways of being able to drive education and awareness with the general public, is through the art of storytelling. And Neutrogena partnered with Kerry Washington. We introduced Neutrogena Studios just over the past year, and the first film coming from Neutrogena Studios was the In the Sun documentary, which can be found today still on YouTube. It's a wonderful documentary. It's not quite long, it's about 40 minutes, and it tells stories of a variety of individuals and families who have all been impacted in some form or fashion. Interestingly, when you look at folks, the level of education that people had before watching the film, 27% of viewers knew that skin cancer was the most prevalent of all cancers. After watching the film, much larger group of the population was much more educated, felt they understood this area much more, which is really important. 93% said they were more aware of the dangers of skin cancer. 82% said they would have their skin checked by a medical professional. 89% said they are more likely to wear sunscreen consistently. All really great. And of course, again, a large group, 85%, who said they were more likely to do self-exams. And that's what we want to do here. We really want to not only drive awareness and education, but then motivation, really driving much more motivation to do something about it. And that's what this film does so well. And with that, I will show just a little snippet of the film.
I love being out in the sun.
The more sun I absorb, I get feel-good feelings going on.
I live in the moment. For me, everything is a new adventure. We were in the sun all the time.
I associate the sun being out and shining with life.
If I'd known about sunscreen, my life would have been entirely different.
So you do have freckles on your back already. That is all from sun damage. When you're young, you just don't think that it could happen.
For me, it was just lucky that they caught it in time.
Sunscreen is sticky. Because I am brown, that means I don't need it.
Never thought it would happen.
Debunks the myth that maybe African Americans don't get skin cancer.
It can happen on anybody.
With having cancer, you have a different perspective.
We have to be able to embrace life in the sun with keeping our skin safe.
No ray of sunlight's ever light.
I hope you enjoyed that. Again, it's available on YouTube. It really is a great short film and documentary telling wonderful stories that for many of us were quite emotional watching. So please, take some time to see that at a later time. Share it with friends and family who you think would benefit from watching the documentary. With that, I want to thank you for your time and patience. I want to thank the organizers of this wonderful event. Keep up all the great work and really trying to get this message out of the importance of sun protection and the science of sunscreens. Again, appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, everyone.